I come home from work sometimes. I come home from my job. I had a hard day at the office, dealing with a bunch of rubber snakes. One of the kids is in the driveway. He's shooting skeet with my rifle. He has your mother's eyes. I think he should give them back. Spooky. Spooky. A spooky good evening to all my dear friends and acquaintances around town, around the globe. It's Halloween 2013, and this is Public Affairs Public Access. I am Paul Colby, your perennial host. Tonight, it's another talkathon covering subjects far and wide. And by the way, I guess I should mention that tonight I'm a little disembodied. You see, on Halloween evening, I almost always spend time out of the body, like I'm sure a number of you do, whether you're conscious of it or not. And I suddenly remembered while I was out of the body that I had to get part of me back together to drop in and be with you folks tonight to talk about what's going on out there in the world and in your backyard. So I'm sure you'll get used to the fact that I'm only partly here, but the big mouth is here, and my tie, I'm sure, made it across the veil, while the rest of me is relaxing in parts unknown to most of you. And hey, that's a good place to start a discussion tonight, which is going to be freewheeling as usual, but when I'm in a body, which I'm not at the moment, when I'm in a body, you know, or when any of us are in a body, there's just a few things that make it work A1 tip-top shape, you know what I mean? And that includes clean air and clean water and nutritious food. That's what it takes to run one of these physical vehicles like I normally appear in here. And so as a point of reference here, I want to talk about clean air, clean water, nutritious food. You know, the air, and look at this. My producer wants me to talk about food first, and that's not the way I wanted to do it. So bring that down for a minute here, because he's hungry. He's hungry for success. I think I've told you that before. But let's talk first about clean air. You know, here, and I don't, am I saying the cup is half full or half empty? That's where we're starting. You know, half of the air in the United States, according to the American Lung Association, is bad enough that it causes health problems for Americans. And, you know, there was a time when Houston would have been one of the cities listed in the top 10 bad air places, but it's not like that anymore. I'm glad to say you can actually breathe here some of the time. It's not like the worst cities in America, which includes your LA and Bakersfield area and Phoenix, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Cincinnati, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky, Birmingham, Alabama. Those are some of the worst places to try to breathe in America today. And as I say, well, Houston might make that list again too, because Greg Abbott, our second highest elected official, likes to pull fights all the time with the EPA, which many of us wish he wouldn't do. But that being said, hey, it's not as bad as China, where some places you can't even see in front of you. As for clean water, you know, 70% of the earth is water, and only about 1% of that water is stuff we can drink. So we start out with a little strategic problem, but then you add to it the weather factors, what Mother Nature has been doing lately, and 36 states expect local or regional drought and water shortages this year, 2013. So, in other words, about half of the country is suffering drought. So like I say, the cup half empty or half full, well, it depends on how you look at it, but it's not the ideal thing a body needs. And you can talk about food now, because I just want to say a couple of things about food. You know, we have in this country 5 times more fast food restaurants than we do grocery stores. So you start at a disadvantage. We know it's junk. We know there's an obesity epidemic, and we know that a bad diet gets you off on the wrong foot all the time. But not only that, junk food, of course, is cheaper than healthy food, which accounts for the fact that so many people rely on it, if you want to call it that. I can't say are nourished by it. And then, of course, in the modern era, you have lots of stuff in the grocery store that is junk food pretending to be healthy. That's one of those pet peeves of mine, you know. But you've heard me talk about that before, and so I'm not going to tell you about, you know, whole wheat breads that have 1 tiny % of some sort of healthy grain mixed in with the main ingredient, poor white bread, or things that are supposed to be healthy substitutes for candy bars that are packed with things that shouldn't even be in a normal diet to begin with, and things like cellulose, which is it's pivoted and it's proclaimed to be fiber. And some of you know cellulose mostly in food products is a code word for wood, yes. Even though there is some cellulose that you would find in celery and lettuce, I'm talking about wood as one of your staples in the American diet. So no food. So what am I saying? Well, the stuff that a body needs, well, we have some air and some water, and we have some pretend to be food. One of the things I find possibly redeeming is the tendency, and for vegetarians, you'll know that they've been welcoming this for some time, but even people who are not vegetarians eat a lot of synthetic meats. And since we have artificial meats stacking up the runway in the grocery stores now, this leaves open the possibility that to deal with our other problems, we could have artificial air. Some of my inside work suggests that what's being done in laboratories right now for artificial air involves a just add water kind of a formula. And there's also, because our water is so bad, there's a drive to create artificial water. And of course, for this, you have to just add air, as I understand it. Or maybe it was cellulose, I forget, wood or something like that. So having said that, just starting off talking about the general condition before you even get into any political issues, well, there it is. And you know, in addition to air and water and nutritious food, if you're going to thrive instead of just get by, you'd like to have a kind of inner balance, inner peace, a kind of guidedness that is within you so that you don't react adversely to the stress-filled world. Who knows? It is the ideal, and a lot of you are doing just fine doing that. You're meditating every day, or you're doing your yoga, or you're exercising, and you're regaining your central balance. But for those people who are awash in mass consciousness, this air and water stuff hasn't been getting any better. It's been getting worse. And I'm saying it's been getting worse going back to the last presidential administration. In fact, I think there's a book out on it right now that pretty much sums up my feelings about this. Leave it to Dick Cheney. Because if you'll recall, back in the early days of that Cheney-Bush administration, President Cheney met with 400 times he met with energy industry officials to set our new energy policies. And most of us never got to hear what was going on in those meetings, and even with class action lawsuits and Freedom of Information Act lawsuits, we still don't know. But President Cheney spoke with environmental groups once and energy officials 400 times. So you know who came to the trial looking for some benefits and who came to talk about their wish list? Well, you know who. So what's happened in the period since then? Well, drilling. Oil and gas drilling has exploded. And one of the consequences of that is that about 42 of our national parks are now threatened with drilling and the side effects of drilling. That's not all. We have fracking as our next major move forward, because you remember hearing all during the last presidential election the would-be public citizens speaking up about the need for diversifying energy and talking about natural gas as a solution. Well, I'll tell you why they were talking about that is because fracking is what got its boots on when Mr. Cheney and the energy officials got together to exempt fracking from the Clean Air and Clean Water Act. And so in a typical fracking operation, for those of you who haven't been paying attention and haven't looked at, say, the movie Gasland, there are about 500,000 wells here in the country. When you frack a well, you use about 8 million gallons of water. And you can frack these wells about 18 times. So if you do the math, as they say, you're talking about 72 trillion gallons of water. In addition to which, you have about 360 million gallons of chemicals. And I'm sure it includes some of your favorite toxic chemicals, you know, stuff like uranium, mercury, radium, methanol, hydrochloric acid, formaldehyde, that sort of thing. We've already had 1,000 documented cases of water contamination, and it's not just the water that is affected. You have open pits where waste evaporates, and that means that volatile organic compounds are also released into the air. So we're poisoning both the air and the water worse than it was before. Isn't that something? And of course, you've talked to settle down with that. I'm not there yet, even though we're trashing the planet. One way we're trashing the planet is buying into the notion of clean coal, a fuel that should have gone away a long time ago as a relic of another era. But when you spend $60 million on public relations convincing people there's such a thing as clean coal, anything's possible. And, well, that's what's going on. Only reason I mention that is that other countries, and we've said this on past shows, other countries like Germany, on a recent typical weekend, 60% of the energy used in Germany was from solar and wind development, solar and wind facilities that they are deliberately building, and democratization of the process of creating energy is what's making it happen there in West Germany. It's not that way here because the same remnants of the Seven Sisters, and there's not even Seven Sisters anymore, those big energy companies aren't letting go of their potential profits stretching into the future. And even if we did have abundant, as you know, natural gas reserves, and even if we went in to the next phase of depleting oil resources, why? There's much cleaner ways to do this, much cleaner, especially, as we're saying, if you're in a body and you'd like your air and water to be nice and not have to think about what planet to flee to after we continue trashing this one. Throughout this little show tonight, I'm illustrating that there are some important new books out there, and so you can just follow that. We're trying to perform yet another public service as we move through all of this. But I almost always come back to this. It's business as usual in Washington, D.C., and it's not any different this cycle than most of the cycles when I tell you about this. And so we've just stopped hearing people talk about fighting to defund Obamacare, and this degenerating into a debate about raising the debt ceiling, while some congressmen were out raising the roof with their boozing, while $24 billion goes up in smoke. And you know what was so interesting during this was you kept hearing talk of a government shakedown. At least that's how I interpreted government shutdown. And the picture I think that may have been in a lot of people's minds was senators and representatives out delivering our mail. Wouldn't that have been the height of imbecility? But we would have deserved it. I suppose we deserve all of that kind of stuff that happens now. In any case, the threat of the shakedown turned into a different debate. Now that's sort of behind us, and one reason that's behind us is you had Ted Cruz from our fine state mucking up the democratic process. I'm sure he has many supporters here, but as we've often said, the other half of Texas is not supporting. But I just want to point you in the direction of a new trend that's going on, in case you didn't pick up on it, is that auto manufacturers will be creating cars in this next selling season that come with a Ted Cruz control. I'm not sure how it works, but I think the idea is that you don't want your car to keep going after it's run out of gas, and I think that's maybe what the Ted Cruz control is designed to do, something like that. I know since things have degenerated in the legislative session, we haven't had action on a lot of important bills. I mean, we've had no action on background checks. I hear this talked about on CNN and news programs all the time. I'm not sure what song these background checks were singing, but I certainly think that we should have more background checks. And having said that, the other side of that coin, since we don't have more background checks, is that we have people touting the right to bear grudges. And I haven't finished reading this book yet, but it's called The Right to Bear Grudges, News Media Silence in an Age of Retro Rockets. I haven't read that many books by Sylvia Boopes yet, but I'm sure she's on to something. We hear that the right to bear grudges is a constitutional protected right. But I don't remember reading about that, when I was going to school. I mean, of course, that was many generations ago, and that was before some of the world wars and some of the phony covert wars and stuff. But I really don't remember much talk about that right to bear grudges. And anyway, one of the things that always comes up when people talk about, the right wing and the left wing, and the right and left wing fighting, they say, you do have control over this process. And why is it that you have control over this process? Well, they always want to tell you that you can vote. So let me start right up here at the top. There have been a lot of changes, in voting requirements in recent years. And in a minute, I'm going to get to some secrets that people don't want you to know about voting. But first, I want to just point a couple of things out here. It was Republicans mostly in the 11 states that began these big changes to up the ante on voter ID, that it was the Republicans who wanted this to happen so that they could keep certain elements of the population that would not normally vote Republican from voting at all. And heaven knows they've done a good job, and so one of the things that I noticed just this week, in fact, just the other day, Wendy Davis, running for a high office here in Texas, epitomizes the problem that women may have if they were married to someone and their name changes. For example, Wendy Russell Davis had to prove she was Wendy Davis. Fortunately, they let her sign an affidavit after showing her ID and actually vote, but some people might not be that lucky. My understanding is that since the Republicans were behind most of this push for voter ID being very solid, that all you have to do in some precincts is to go in and announce that you are Dick Cheney, and I think they'll take your word for it. You don't even have to produce any ID. You just go to the front of the line. But what about the rest of us? What about the rest of us who want to make sure we can vote, and they're trying to keep us from voting? Well, as I was saying, in this popular book here, The Voter ID Secrets They Don't Want You to Know, and this one is J. Buzz Bill Sizer, as told to John Patterson Bub Fufu, who I think is one of our, well, he may not be one of our leading political thinkers, but in any case, the book has a lot of helpful tips that you could even use probably here in Texas. For one thing, you can simply bring a copy of your Facebook page, and that will count in some districts. Or bring a service interruption notice that shows they cut off your electricity or your water. Just make sure it has your name on it. Or if your dog or cat has had a checkup recently at the vet's, just bring that along and make sure your name is mentioned on the form, on the bill. And this applies also to some kind of recipes. I'm told there are specific kinds of recipes, but I know of at least one person who brought a spaghetti recipe that has family secrets, and that was good enough to get them in to vote early and often. Of course, your concealed hunting or fishing licenses are acceptable in many states. The prescription drugs you take, if you can bring a recent, well, you see what I mean. There are ways of getting around this attempt to purge people from the voting rolls by making it harder to vote. And dadgummit, we need to show them who's boss. And when I find out who's boss on one of our next meetings together, I'll certainly tell you who's boss. But what it really comes down to is, after all of this episode here of trying to stop Obamacare, the Tea Party is pretty pissed off, is what I hear on TV all of the time. I can see why they're upset, because they sent people to Washington to shut down Washington, and now it's still running again. So I'm not sure what they have for dinner, but there's probably not enough cellulose in there to balance things out. And in any case, I've been trying to read up on the things that mostly bother them. One of the interesting books I've looked at is a new one called Whose Behind Is It? The New Species on Mount Rushmore. And well, actually, I forgot to bring the other picture of the book, because on the back cover of the book, of course, you see the behind of Mount Rushmore, which the Tea Party thinks has been, it's just been tainted with all of these faces. They may as well have John, Paul, George, and Ringo up there, because at least they're not as controversial across political lines as some of those people who are currently sitting on the rock face. You know what I'm saying? But let me just mention some other news along these lines, because this is one thing where I don't know where the right wing or the left wing stand on this, but just hearing about it irritated me. In Ohio, when they want to do lethal injections, they usually use phenobarbital, like most of your high class, you know, well, I don't know if any of these should be considered high class. Actually, I don't think executions are very high class, and I'll get into that more. But since they ran out of phenobarbital, they're having to experiment by putting together 2 other pharmaceuticals to see if they can, you know, be a replacement killer. So pretty soon, I guess we'll see where people stand on something like that. But right now, I guess the person who seems to have the most political problems is President Obama. I mean, he's at the top of the heap, so of course all of the criticism when things go wrong or don't go as right as they were purported to be about to go right, you know, then they take the flack for it. And especially in what is called the current political environment. So, you know, one of the biggest problems that Obama has, of course, at the present time is the so-called rollout of the Affordable Care Act. And the main complaint that I have been hearing, you know, on other news stories that aren't as you know, as complete in their analysis as this one, is that people can't seem to get on the website. Well, some of them, I've been researching it. Some people have the URL for the website wrong, and so when they go to www.takeoverofthehealthcaresystem.com, of course they can't get on, because that's not really what it is. Or some other people are convinced that they should go to First Our Healthcare, Then Our Guns.com. And I'm not sure what comes up. When I tried to get on that site, excuse me, I couldn't get anything to come up. And then other people, they're looking at the site www.deathpanels.com, which they take to be Obamacare, or some of them are calling it the Obama Cure. But there's a couple of ways to get in there, and one of them is to just punch in what naturally follows, www.romneycare.gov. So there it is. You find the proposal that originally came from the Republican side of the aisle that is now anathema to the Republican side of the aisle and to many others. But then again, well, eventually, you know, if you're paying attention, you'll wind up at the official government health care site, you know, healthcare.gov, and that's where you're supposed to look to see what's out there, and to sign yourself up. You know, you'll get a few questions asked, and then as you go through it, the questions, you know, put you in a certain category and offer you some options and things like that. And on the basis of that, I just come away from looking at this stuff and wondering, where is the health care system? What we seem to have here going on is some sort of a welfare operation for insurance companies and pharmaceuticals, because the things that I would consider to be part of a program to increase and to maintain your health aren't even available. I mean, are there any meditation and yoga classes covered? I don't think so. Can you get jogging shoes? Can you get a membership in the fitness club? Well, no, even though that's obviously healthy. What about homeopathic or herbal medicines? No, you still have to go to one of the health food stores and pay your pretty penny for stuff like that, don't you? I just don't know. I mean, you don't have Rife machines and zappers. You don't have light and sound healing devices. You don't have consultations with energy medicine practitioners. It ought to pay for your vitamins and your supplements, don't you think? That's healthy. That's maintaining your health. Or go to a hypnotist or some massage therapist to deal with a problem that originates in the body. Well, let's be honest, folks. I mean, this kind of stuff is obvious. Are you maintaining health care, or are you creating a revolving door system that just treats symptoms, and now we put another name on it. You hear a lot from the right in the way of complaints saying, well, see, all of you folks on the left, this is what you wanted and it's not working out. Well, just so that they remember, most of us on the left and some of us who are moderate and in the center, what we wanted was the so-called public option. We wanted a system where your health care was paid for. So, you know, the debate always devolves into a question of like, oh yeah, you want free health care? Well, no, it's not free. Basically, what you have is the tax revenue that's collected from the likes of us being spent on something other than weapons of war. And, you know, that's another one of my pet peeves. We've talked in the past about how much money is actually spent on defense and how much of that is useless, and that's about as far as you have to go in that argument. That's about as far as, well, I mean, we've taken it further than that before, but you know what I'm saying? If we just rescue about 1/2 of the dollars spent on so-called national defense and spying, including spying on ourselves, you know, you ordinary citizens, then we pay for health care. So it's not free, it's just we decided this is a better way to spend our money and we all get paid for health care. So anyway, that's one of Obama's biggest problems. And I think it is funny when we talk about the fact that people are having trouble getting their information in, you know, and the website not functioning in the way that it was supposed to so that people can't sign up. Well, given the extent of illegal surveillance by the National Security Agency, among other illegal spying operations going on in the United States, and among other private wholesale intrusions into people's information and privacy resources, it's fairly obvious that people don't even need to sign up at all. The NSA could just hand over a list of people who are in the state of blank or the city of blank who are of a certain age and fill out the forms for them because they have all the information about us. So what is the big deal here? As long as we've spent the money, not that anybody asked us about whether we wanted to spend the money on illegal spying of American citizens who aren't even, in a comic book, terrorists and aren't even interesting for that matter, not even worth spying on. As long as we all have a dossier, there's no need to go sign up for health care. Just have the NSA hand over the information on a golden plate, if that be the case. So anyway, that's Obama's main problem, Obamacare. There's no Obamacare for Obamacare at the moment. Obviously, with any big initiative, there's going to be some bugs in the machine before it gets straightened out. Goodness gracious, I'm glad for people who couldn't get insurance who will get it, but like so many others, I'm not going to buy it because I don't need big pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies telling me how to stay healthy. And we've already started our discussion at the very top by how to stay healthy, staying out of stress and actually eating decent food, and penalizing and jailing people who pollute the air and water. Isn't it nice to have simple solutions that people don't even talk about? Well, another problem that Obama has, since I'm talking about Obama's problems, drones. Drones. It's, you know, I know that in any political operation, your spin boys will go out there and try to put the best face on it. I know there's even a book out there, The Lighter Side of Drone Warfare. But let me just tell you something, folks. There's no lighter side of drone warfare. I mean, innocent civilians being killed with weapons that are fired from somewhere else so that the people who are shooting them don't even necessarily have to deal with the other people as human beings, but as collateral damage. That sucks. That's for savages and barbarians. but we can't seem to get away from it, or at least the Obama administration can't seem to stand up to those who are doing it. Yes, he set up a kill list, bad enough. We didn't elect somebody to do the same things that were being done under Bush and Cheney. That's the complaint you usually hear from all of us who are pro-peace and who think war is getting to be silly, and only not silly for those who make gigantic corporate war profits. But having said that, you know, given that you can't find any reasonable, I mean, these are powerful weapons, and the reason that they're powerful and that you can't find any reasonable way to justify them is that probably for every terrorist you might hit with a drone, you're going to alienate 1,000 people who were in the area. But for every pack of civilians that you kill instead of the terrorists, you probably create 10,000 people that hate America even more than we did. So it's a powerful, stupid weapon, I'll grant you that. And what to me is the most disturbing element in this stupidity is that drones are now something that you're going to see used by private concerns. And in fact, we've already had reports of this, of drones flying around that are, at this point, it doesn't even matter what they're doing. The important thing is that when a drone flies over a crowd of people at the Galleria, or flies over a rock concert, or flies over a high school graduation picture, or whatever it flies over, if you can't even identify whose drone it is, then I think we should have an amendment that makes it a constitutional right of all of us who bear grudges to blow the damn thing out of the air. What do you think about that? Maybe that would work, huh? Anyway, Obama has other problems as well. I mean, they're stacking up on him, and one of these problems, of course, is NSA spying. Now, I got to tell you something right out of the top of my hat here, and that is that even though Obama gets blamed for NSA spying, and he certainly has the ability to stop some people in their tracks, but let us do recall that some of the rogue operations of the NSA exceed even the authorities' so-called authority, legal authority, so-called legal sign-off that first originated in the Bush-Cheney administration. Now they're really doing rogue operations. So when the German chancellor complains, Angela Merkel says, "Why are you spying on me?" And Obama says, "I didn't know we were spying on you." He could be telling the truth. He might not have been told about that at this point. And I'm not ready for iPhone tricks here. Look, they're always getting ahead of me. I guess they don't like what I'm talking about now, but I'm not through with it yet. The German chancellor asked Obama, you know, is this true? And of course he says, well, I didn't know. So maybe he did and maybe he didn't, but if he didn't, then it's even worse than if he did. And I can just imagine Obama saying to Angela Merkel, well, tell you the truth, I didn't realize they were spying on me, but he certainly should have. And the question is the NSA spying on Facebook, or is Facebook spying on the NSA for the benefit of all of its, you know, Facebook page holders? I just don't know. But what it comes down to is we do have someone in the form of a national hero. Before we had let's go back a few, you know, go back a few years. Julian Assange made possible the release of documents that showed some of the hideous things that were being done in our name, and he should have had a Nobel Prize, but instead he becomes persona non grata because the powers that be in our government and other governments don't want people to hear this stuff. Well, now we have Mr. Snowden talking about the bad stuff that's going on at the NSA, which gives you pause and isn't really new because that information was out there 5 years ago, but God bless him for bringing it forward. And he too should probably be getting a Presidential Medal of Honor or a Nobel Prize for exposing dereliction of duty and illegal actions. But instead, no. What do we like to do with the messengers? Well, if we're the big boys and we don't want things to get out of control and out from under our thumb, then we push these people outside. I mean, whistleblowers are supposed to be welcome in these United States. There are even whistleblower protection acts, you know, and not only the federal government has them, some states have whistleblower protection acts. But we don't walk our talk, which has created some talk among other people about who should be in jail instead of Mr. Snowden. I found this entertaining. I mean, you have to stay up late at night on on TV to see this because it doesn't get into the mainstream news. No, not very much. But the names I heard were, well, the top one will surprise you, Dick Cheney. And then Chris Brown is also mentioned as maybe should be in jail instead of Edward Snowden. Miley Cyrus, apparently for not being able to dance very well, is mentioned as someone who should be in jail instead. Lance Armstrong is, many people say, should be in jail instead of Edward Snowden. That's a long list, and it includes even Hurricane Zelda. I didn't understand that when I heard it, and I don't understand it now. But anyway, this talk of the NSA leads me to another discussion, which is the new operating system for your iPhone and for iOS, for all your other devices like your iPad and various new operating systems, because what was that book about the iPhone again? Yes, there are iPhone tricks that people don't want you to know about, and one of the new apps, which I just downloaded, enables you to spy on the NSA. It's a little too complicated for me to explain, you know, exactly what works, how it works, but it is a pretty clever little device. And the only problem is, you know, it's indiscriminate, like the spying by the NSA. I mean, you don't know whose living room at the NSA or which bathroom or which conference room you're going to tune into. So the app still has some bugs, but you can definitely hear a lot of the stuff that's going on. Now, other things in these new operating systems for iPhones and Androids and other stuff, they just keep getting better and better. I have a new can opener that I use with my iPhone now. It works a lot better than the ones that I had before. There's one I haven't tried it myself, but apparently you can park your Mercedes or your BMW or you know, or your Lexus or somebody else's. And that's what I think is interesting. I'd like to use my app and go out to a parking lot and move a few cars around. It sounds like a lot more entertainment than you usually have on a Saturday night around here. Some of these things apparently will defrost your refrigerator. I'm not sure how they do that. I'm told there's one that will go to the bathroom for you. And so that would be a good one for people who, you know, have to do extended hours of public speaking or whatnot, or spend entire days on horseback. I'm not sure why anybody would spend an entire day on horseback and not be able to go to the bathroom. But and they also will control drones. So I just like to tie this stuff all together for you. I think we should turn some of these drones around, you know, and just well, you know, we could just plunge them into the ocean, and or we could take down unsightly buildings that are in need of repair that no no one has gotten around to repairing, or God knows what else we could do. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we could do, and so I just hope that as these new applications are developed, that we'll all keep a close eye on how they're used, because there's always that potential for abuse. Right now, for example, I am using my latest operating system application to keep my head and tie here while I'm away, and it's like even though I can use this and I feel pretty confident about what I'm doing, I'm not going to recommend things. It's like they say sometimes, do not try this at home. So if you get some of these sophisticated bootleg apps that are out there, you watch what you're doing, okay? Wait until it's been tried by a few other people before you jump off the bridge, the first time, showing them what you can do. And this just reminds me of something. I'm sure the connection may not be obvious to you, but I just wanted to share this thought with you too, because there may be an app that explains this. But in the old days, when people milked a cow and maybe had a glass of milk, you realize, of course, they were having milk from one cow. Okay? You follow me so far? Did you know the way that milk is produced today, you've got a process where commercial milk is made by combining heat, and not only combining, but heating and homogenizing the milk from hundreds of cows. I mean, have you ever thought about that? Have you thought about that when you have a glass of milk, it's not like you are connecting to one sentient being out there, one dairy maker, but hundreds. Huh. Well, anyway, I think that's very important, and somebody should create an app that enables you to, say, milk a single solo cow, as in the old days. I mean, because most people wouldn't want to, get in there and do it themselves, but an app that would allow you to milk a single cow so that the glass of milk you're having is of a unitary construction. Does that make sense? It doesn't? Okay, well, anyway, another thing that's going on out there right now, for those of you who haven't been paying attention, there's a big to-do about the name of the Washington Redskins football team, and there are those who want the name changed because it's disrespectful. And in this particular case, I got to say that I completely agree with the sentiment. I understand. There are good reasons that we should reconsider even having the Cleveland Indians be Indians or the Atlanta Braves be Braves, but Redskins, I can see the point. I don't like it. And so I know which side I'm on in that discussion, but I think there's some interesting stuff going on as a result of that discussion. And here's what I mean. The fact that people are talking about changing names means that it's not only sports teams that are going to change names, but let me just give you some examples here. There's a movement to change some of New York's football teams to the two bigs, for the two bigs to fail, that are down there on Wall Street, And then other sports teams like high schools and colleges are just going for a little bit classier name than they used to have. Something more entertaining to listen to. So for example, I think Boston College is considering that they want to change the name to the Boston College Muffaladas. And then a small school in Vermont St. Edward's Snake Charmers. Now that's pretty classy, don't you think? They used to be I forget what they used to be, but you know, the Snake Charmers is certainly a more captivating name. Central Nebraska's State Bloopers. That's one of my new favorite basketball outfits, along with the Ohio State Crackpots. Oh, excuse me, it's the Crockpots. Yes, yes. The Crackpots, I think, were the, if I remember from, they were mentioned in that book we told you about, the right to bear grudges, the Crackpots. So anyway, it's not likely to stop there, because now here's something that I didn't mention before, and let me put it in this context for you here. Because of these divisions between right and left that you see on the political horizon these days in so many states, you know, where there are maybe urban areas that are so-called liberal and rural areas that are so-called conservative, those kind of, you know, generally speaking, divisions of the polity. Well, there is a movement afoot for some cities to form new states. I just read about this the other day. I can't tell you for sure what cities it is. It's kind of a hush-hush thing that these these cities are talking to each other about it, and then once they accomplish, you know, putting 2 or 3 cities together and either changing states or changing their names, well, of course, they're going to have a flashy name too. So be on the lookout for that. For example, we might have parts of Houston and Austin and San Antonio forming a new city, and then, you know, the question is whether we stay in Texas or we move to another state. I mean, geographically, you wouldn't have to move. You see what I mean? It's in this internet era of today where we're everywhere at once. The idea is that some of these cities that get together and change their name, they wouldn't even necessarily have to geographically move. You get what I mean? But they would have to change their name. So, like, one name that I heard on the horizon is the city of Eggnog, and I can't tell you which one that is. But anyway, I have seen other examples. Churches, for example. Some churches to jazz up their image, and there's one right here in town, St. Hoover the Rascal Catholic Church, and they have a slogan, "We welcome you and your bird." And I don't know what that means. We welcome you and your bird. Well, but anyway, St. Hoover the Rascal, I like it. And that used to be just one of those St. John the somebody, St. John the caretaker or something. But, and while we're talking about names and big names, you know, it's the time of year where you have nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it's, you know, people often argue about, you know, this group should be there, or my favorite singer, he's still not in there yet, you know, and generally speaking, you have to be jamming and doing it for some time, or it used to be that way, you know. You had to be jamming and doing your thing for some time before you're even considered. Now people who had one seemingly hit record or some MTV video of some novelty years ago, they get promoted pretty quick. But people are getting so tired of the inductees, let's call them that, the potential inductees, that there is a movement afoot now to add other people who just have the rock and roll sort of bravura, even if they don't play an instrument. And so here again, I have another list of names for you. Guess who tops this list? We've talked about him a lot tonight. Dick Cheney, nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Jodi Arias. I mean, just on the basis of sheer gumption, I think. Julian Assange, that's good to hear. He has at least one arena where people think he's up to it. Benjamin Cumberbatch is often mentioned now, and there's no mystery there. Actually, there is a mystery. I get it. Homer Simpson, I think, is a shoe-in this year. And Jesse Ventura, I'd say a 50-50 shot at it. But anyway, the main thing is you no longer need a guitar to make it into the big house. Isn't that good news for some of you who are not musically talented, but always wanted to be part of the Cleveland scene? Well, now you can. I want to talk finally, if I've got a few more minutes here. It'll be coming up next month, the 50th anniversary of the JFK assassination. And from early on, people in the United States did not buy into the idea that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone assassin. No matter how many government financed or government sponsored articles, books, managed hearings there were, and official reports, people just didn't believe it, even from the get-go, that he was a lone assassin. And over the years, enough people have acquainted themselves with the facts to know that he probably, he didn't have anything to do with shooting the president. He was the patsy. He was set up for the operation, and most of us know that. I mean, I realize that there are still some people that cling to the belief of a lone assassin, but it's something like 70% of us in this country who at least don't think Lee Harvey Oswald is a lone assassin, and probably closer to about 40% now who understand that he wasn't an assassin at all. But there are others. There are others. And you know, the lone assassin concept, the lone assassin theory was so popular that the government and the conspirators who are behind any number of synthetic events these days always manage to have a lone assassin as part of the picture. And I just have to tell you that there are some real loons out there. A new book here by Bailey Phelps that we're talking about, that the shots from the 75th floor window, that blames Lee Harvey Oswald for everything that's happened ever since. From Watergate, the Wall Street bailout, the swine flu epidemic, I think you remember that, the attack on the Twin Towers, the epidemic of obesity even, and the NSA spying scandal. So there is at least still out there, I just have to tell you, a small number of people who think really it's just one lone nut doing something here and there that causes our problems. But in this age of mass unemployment, mass shootings, and the general depravity or stupidity of mass consciousness, it's really hard to get back to that inner balancing center sometimes, but I hope most of you have figured out a way to do it, and that no matter what goes on in this silly world, you're always seeing the good, and you're always running into the people you want to talk to, and you're ignoring all of the stuff that bugs you, but doesn't have to mess your day up. And I hope it doesn't mess your day up, or your future plans, or the plans that we can all make together to make this a more entertaining place where we can all have challenges but respond with vigor, creativity, and a great sense of humor. And so until the next time I can see you in a body again, y'all have a good night and trick or treat. Okay?
Louis, does your den mother know about this? If I were to ignore this infraction, I would certainly be remiss. You get my drift?